Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am filming my April wrap up. I am pre-filming this because by the time you watch this I will be by a pool in a Greek villa on honeymoon for 2 weeks, and my mother-in-law will be here to cat and house sit. So the next few videos that you see are pre-filmed, but this was the only way to fit it all in and get a video up every week. I am also setting these to post whilst I'm away, so let's hope that YouTube posts them at the right time. We'll see. Anyway, today I'm doing my wrap up. So today's the 24th, I think, of April. It's just after the bank holiday weekend. So I've still got a couple of days left, and technically the last book in this list I'm still reading, but I am going to finish it probably today, and I'm already like pretty solid on what my rating will be, so I just thought I'd include it. Yeah, so let's just get on with it. So I've got my stats written down because my memory's horrible. So I have read 10 books in the month of April. My average rating is 4.9, so I've had a really good reading month. And of those 10 books, 6 of them were 5 stars. So I've really thoroughly enjoyed what I've read this month. I think I chose really well. I'm definitely in a really good groove at the moment where I'm choosing stuff that I know I'm going to like. It's quite a variety of things as well, and I've just had a really lovely time. So of those 10, I have got 1 historical, 1 thriller, 3 contemporary, 2 middle grade, 1 horror, 1 non-fiction, 1 classic and 1 fantasy. So there is quite a good mix, but of them, 4 of them have got magical elements in some way. So it's been a very witchy month and I have loved it. So the first book that I finished in April was Sovereign by C J Sansom. Sorry, Sansom. I get this wrong every time I say his name, so I do apologise. So this is the 3rd in the Matthew Shardlake series. I've talked about these books before. I read the 2nd one, I think, earlier in the year. But they're basically mystery thrillers set in Tudor times. Matthew Shardlake is he's a solicitor or a lawyer, but he's basically the person who's looking into what's going on and is trying to get to the bottom of it. It's the 3rd in a series, so it's kind of difficult to describe without giving spoilers. It's a hefty book. This is the biggest one so far, which I think is like 600 pages. Yeah, 658 pages. So it's not small, but I absolutely flew through it and I didn't notice how big it was. I did give it 4 stars because it did drag very slightly sort of in the last third, and I didn't love the ending, but I still really like the characters. I will still keep reading. I think there's 7 or 8 books in the series. I'm usually a real commitment phobe with long series like this, but I'm just kind of reading one at a time, and if I read one that I really don't like, I'll just stop. But I did enjoy this. I enjoyed it enough to keep going, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to more from this. The other thing I've really liked with this series, because most books that are set in Tudor times are like set around the court and all you get is like Henry VIII and his wives. This is the first time we've actually met Henry VIII and one of his wives in this book. At this point, Henry is married to Catherine Howard, his 5th wife. And I've kind of liked that we weren't directly involved with the court, but actually the way it was done in this book was really clever. And it brought up some interesting questions. So yeah, I would highly recommend this series. I really enjoyed this one. This cover's beautiful and it was a good time. Next, I read my 3rd Karin Slaughter book, which was Pretty Girls. I read one of her others, which is the name of which has just completely escaped me. There was a 5-star read for me, I think, last month or the month before. This was a 4-star. I really liked it. It's basically, I'll read you the back because it's just easier than I won't accidentally spoil stuff. So 20 years ago, Claire Scott's eldest sister Julia went missing. It was a mystery that was never solved and it tore her family apart. Now another girl has disappeared with chilling echoes of the past, and Claire is convinced that Julia's disappearance is linked. But when she begins to learn the truth about her sister, she is confronted with a shocking discovery and nothing will ever be the same. So this is very much like The Good Daughter. That was the one. My memory's horrible. This was very much like that in that it's about sisters and the connection between sisters and like family secrets and stuff. It's incredibly violent, like all of Karin Slaughter's work. So there are trigger warnings for literally everything. So be careful if you're not into gruesome stuff, because this is horrific. It's easily one of the darkest things that I've ever read, but I weirdly enjoyed it. I think it's because she makes her characters so human, you just can't help but want to know what's going to happen to them. There were a couple of good twists in this. The first one I saw coming. I think it's signposted right from the beginning. But then there were a couple of others that I didn't see. So I really liked it. The reason I gave it 4 instead of 5 stars was because the ending I thought was a little bit abrupt and it wasn't quite as satisfying as I was hoping for. But I would still highly recommend this. But just go into it carefully, as with all Karin Slaughter books, because it is brutal. Okay, the next book I read, I'm actually going to do an individual book review for it because it gave me so many feelings, and that book was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I won't get into it too much because I am going to do a full-length video on it, which I think is the next one or the one after that's coming up. I'm about to pre-film a whole bunch of stuff and I'm going to do that shortly, so I won't get too into it here. But the basic premise is that it's the kind of life story of a starlet from the 50s. I think it starts in the 1950s. And she basically calls a journalist to her house and says, I'm ready to tell my life story. And she's now in her 70s or 80s. And it's just her life story. I did not expect to like this. I actually listened to this on audiobook and I picked it up because I've got a Scribed account and it was on there. And it was a fairly short audiobook. And I just thought, well, it'll be fine whilst I'm driving to and from work. And then, oh my God, it gripped me. It hooked me so hard. I will get more into it in the video for it, but I would really highly recommend it. In fact, I liked it so much I got about a quarter of the way through and I had to buy a physical copy of the book because I knew that I would want to reread it and also lend it to people and be like, read this book. So yeah, highly recommended. Easily 5 stars. The cover's great as well. Like the inside, and just the hype is real. Read it, it's so good. Okay, next I read a middle grade book, which was The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. It was the first of the kind of witchy books that I read this month. It's a floppy one. Oh, yes. So first of all, look at this cover. Absolutely stunning. It also contains loads of elements of the actual story, and I love when they do that. Because then once you've read it, you can look back at it and think, oh, okay, that connects to that. It's really clever, and it's just beautiful. So this is middle grade, and basically it tells the story of a village who live in fear of the witch who lives in the woods, and every year they leave a baby in the woods as a sacrifice. And then it flips to the witch's perspective, and she is really perplexed as to why these people are leaving babies in the woods every year. And she's kind of confused, but she's like, okay, clearly they didn't want this child for whatever reason. So she scoops them up and she crosses the forest, and where there's another village on the other side, and she delivers these babies to families that don't have kids there. And this has been going on for generations. And then one year, when she's making this journey with a baby that's left in the woods, she accidentally feeds the baby moonlight, which makes the child magic. And then we get the story of that child, who is named Luna, and it's just wonderful. This was another 5-star read. I had a really good run this month, actually, and this was just wonderful. This is going to be going into my pile of books I'm saving for Charlie, because he's not quite old enough for this yet, because it does get quite dark in places. But it's about family, it's about what makes a family, it's about love, it's about learning who you are, it's coming of age, it's about acceptance. It's wonderful, and it's one of those, I might do a full-length review at some point because I really want to talk about details of it, but it's just gorgeous, and it's so beautifully and vividly written. It did remind me of Alice Hoffman's writing for Practical Magic. It might be that it's because the subject matter is similar, but I just thought it was wonderful. I had a lovely time reading this, and I would highly recommend it. And it's not just for kids, I would highly recommend it for adults as well. Next, I read a little novella which my friend Amy had gifted me, which is Mr. Salary by Sally Rooney. It's literally like 30 pages long. 33 pages long. So I wasn't even sure if I should include it, but then I put a poll on my Bookstagram account. You guys seem to think it counted, so here we are. It's one of these tiny favour stories. Sally Rooney obviously wrote Normal People and Conversations with Friends. I've read Normal People and really enjoyed it. I've got Conversations with Friends coming up on my TBR shortly, but this one was just, took me like 15 minutes to read, if that. And it tells the story of well, it's kind of difficult to explain, and one of the things that I loved was how Rooney managed to pack a whole storyline into 33 pages, and they're small pages and the font's massive. Like, the font is big, so that's some serious skill. But it's basically about a girl that goes home at Christmas because her dad is ill, and she's staying with a man that she lived with while she was at college, and they've got this odd dysfunctional relationship. It's not a romantic one, but she kind of wants it to be, and he clearly does as well, but because there's a big age difference and he's sort of partly responsible for her, it's a little bit odd. It's basically like 33 pages of sexual tension, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars only because I wanted more. It felt like it's over way too soon. I really want to spend some proper time with these characters. If she bought a full-length novel with these characters in, I would definitely read it. But I think it just shows her skill. And also, if you're not sure if you're going to like her writing, this would be a really good one to try because it's so short. It's not going to take up a lot of your time, but it will tell you whether or not you're going to get on with her style of writing. So yeah, there was that little book. What was next? Oh yes, another kind of, does it count as witchcraft, this book? It's kind of got supernatural vibes to it. It's an author that if you said to me which author don't you get on with, this would be like near the top of the list. But I got talked into reading this book and then absolutely loved it. I almost read it in one go, and then I deliberately put it down and read it the next day because I didn't want to get too caught up. But that's Carrie by Stephen King. I think I'm right in saying this was his first published book. I've seen both film adaptations and quite enjoyed them. I'm a wimp, so I watched like a lot of it like that because like visual horror I'm not good with. Weirdly written horror I'm usually fine. This, if you don't know, tells the story of Carrie. She is a teenage girl who's bullied at school, and she has a very overbearing, very religious mother who's clearly got some mental health issues. And Carrie finds out one day that she's telekinetic, so she can move things with her mind. And it's a story about, again, coming of age, finding yourself. It's about bullying. It's very gory towards the end, but I just got really caught up in it. And one of the things I didn't get from either of the adaptations that I've watched was the other narratives that are in the story. I think both the films that I've watched, it's just about Carrie's story, but there's actually loads of other people's stories kind of woven in. I gave this 5 stars, and I've said before I don't like King's writing, but I loved this and I loved Misery, so I think as long as I choose carefully, maybe I do like his writing, some of it. So that was a revelation, thankfully. It's not very long. My only thing with it is that it doesn't have chapters, which really bugs me. It's just like one long chapter. But I did also get used to that, and I still gave it 5 stars. This is a really cool edition as well, because I think sometimes the editions of his books can be a little bit, but this is what is this? Oh, it's a Hodder Chilling Classic edition, for anybody that wants to know. And yeah, really enjoyed it. So who knew? Right, next I read Feminists Don't Wear Pink and Other Lies by Scarlett Curtis. Oh my god, I might do a separate video on this. I loved this. This has been on my TBR for a while. I've seen a few people talk about it. It's a collection of feminist essays. There's like 54 essays, I think, in here from all kinds of people. We've got, well, famous people, non-famous people. We've got people who have been activists their whole life. We've got people who are at the start of their feminist journeys. And it's basically just a collection of voices telling you what feminism means to them, what it is, what it isn't, why we need it. Some of them are like a page long. There are a couple that are sort of 12 pages long, so it's really readable. It's a book I know I will come back to a lot. Again, it's another one I'm going to make Charlie read when he's older. This I was really pleased to find in the young adult section of Waterstones, and it's clearly marketed at a young adult audience, which is so good because this is a really important message to get to all of our young people. It's also not just about girls and girls stuff. There's a couple of essays in here about why men need feminism. It talks a bit about toxic masculinity, you know, and why everybody needs feminism. I won't bang the drum too hard here because I might do a separate video on it, but I thought this was really thought-provoking. I'm someone who came to feminism late, but I'm now a couple of years into my journey, so I would consider myself a fairly well-educated feminist. I still learned stuff from this. I think it'd be a great conversation starter with young people in your life. So some of my cousins might find this under the tree for them at Christmas. And just adored it. I thought it was fab, gave it 5 stars. Next, I listened to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban on audiobook. Oh, yes, this is my favourite. I've said this several times on this channel. This is my favourite of the Harry Potter books. I listened to Stephen Fry read it using my Audible credit. Yes. I would happily have him just narrate my whole life. Or listen to him read, I don't know, the dictionary. His voice is amazing. I particularly love his Hagrid voice. I think it's really good. And it does sound just like Robbie Coltrane. But anyway, this is the 3rd in the Harry Potter series. I'm not going to talk about this loads because everybody knows the story. This is a very nice edition. I've got the full set of these upstairs. There's the night bus. It's my favourite of the books. I had a lovely time. It was 5 stars. Next, I've got my list down here. Oh yeah, the next audiobook that I listened to after that was A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. This is the first in the Sherlock Holmes series. Again, very nice edition. This is one of the Penguin English Library editions. Very nice. Yeah, I listened to this on Scribed. It's the first story in the Sherlock Holmes series, as I said, and it's where he and Dr. Watson meet and then they solve a murder. I've watched loads of Sherlock Holmes adaptations, but I realised I hadn't actually read any of the books, so I thought I'd give this a go. I gave this a 3 out of 5. It was my lowest rated book of the month. The audiobook was good. I'm glad I listened to it on audio because I think it probably made it easier to digest. This does go off on a massive tangent halfway through, and I did actually wonder if I had stumbled onto the wrong audiobook because it was very confusing to start with. It does all come together at the end. I did enjoy it. I'm not sure I'm going to keep going, but I'm glad that I've read it. And then following that, I listened to one more audiobook of the month, which is My Sister, the Serial Killer. Again, this is longlisted for the Women's Fiction Prize. I listened to it, to be honest, because it was only 4 hours long, and I'd heard a few people talk about it, or a lot of people talk about it. I'm glad I'd heard some reviews before I went into it because it's marketed as a kind of comic, like a dark comic serial killer book. I didn't actually get any comedy from it at all, but I'd seen a few people warn about that before I went into it, so that was fine. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars in the end. It's basically our protagonist gets a phone call from her sister one night to say that she's killed another of her boyfriends, that she's already killed 2. Each time she says it's in self-defense. I found it interesting because it was a really interesting dynamic that the sisters had, and it was a really good look at like jealousy and sibling rivalry, and just this very complicated and toxic relationship between these 2 sisters, which I really liked. So if you like books centred around intense female relationships, I would recommend it. I only gave it 4 out of 5. It was too short and it was too brief, and it didn't get enough in depth into the characters and why they were this way. Some of it was kind of alluded to and hinted at, but we didn't ever actually quite get into it. So for me, it was a 4 out of 5. I did enjoy it. Glad I listened to it on audiobook. And I would give it a go if you fancy it. And then my last book for the month is The Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden. As you can see, I've still got a little bit to go, but I will probably finish this today, definitely this week. How beautiful is this cover? Again, just stunning. So this is the 3rd in the, what is the trilogy called? I think it's the Winter Night trilogy. It started with The Bear and the Nightingale, and then it was The Girl in the Tower, and then we've got Winter of the Witch. My one gripe with this edition, it doesn't match the others. It's much bigger, and I almost cried when it arrived. But we'll just have to get over that, and I will blatantly buy the edition that matches the other 2 when it comes out, because I'm just that person. I haven't had a trilogy that I've enjoyed as much as this for a really, really long time. I honestly can't remember the last time a series grabbed me this much. This is the 3rd one, so obviously can't get into it without spoilers. I may well do a separate video on all 3, but it's basically Russian-inspired folklore. We're following Vasya. She is our protagonist. It's when, at the start of the first book, she's like 7 or 8 years old. By this one, she's a fully grown woman. It's about coming of age. It's about witchcraft. These seem to have been the themes that I've been reading around this month. There's a romance. There's a really good romance in here. One that you like really believe in. I don't really like romance in books, but I've like fully bought into this one. There's some great feminist themes running through it, and yeah, can't say too much because it's the third one. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm reading it slowly, deliberately, because I'm going to be sad when it's done. I am including it on my wrap up because I am going to finish it shortly, and I know that I'm pretty sure it's going to be a 5-star read. So I'm just putting this out there now. I will put a review up on my Bookstagram account once I'm done, but I'm pretty confident that's where this is going to end up. So just double checking my list, make sure I haven't forgotten anything. No, those are all the books that I read in April. Let's have a chat below. Let me know if you have read any of these, what you think of them. If you have you added any of them to your TBR list? Yeah, let's chat in the comments, and I will see you for a video next time. Thanks guys, bye.